Assalamualaikum to all my panels. My name is Nur Adila Shafika binti Aliman. My metric number is 2019339049. So this is my research title, which is Relationship between Sport Involvement and Psychological Well-being among UITM students. So World Health Organization has defined um, positive mental health has a state of well-being in which the individual is aware of the abilities of their can cope with the stress, work productivity, and contribute to society. So next is psychological well-being has three components, which is emotional, cognitive, and life satisfaction. Emotional can be divided into two, which is positive and negative, where positive, for example, you happy, you enjoy, and you're excited. For the negative, you angry, you sad, uh, um, and so on. For the life satisfaction is when the individual have level of subjective well-being is high. Okay, so psychological well-being is worse evaluated by considering mood, threat anxiety, self-esteem, mastery, and individual self-perception of health and well-being. Let's proceed to the sport involvement. So, sport involvement should be encouraged since primary school. Why? Because a healthy individual will lead to better outcome in life. So, good health and well-being can be maintained through involvement in sport. This is based on the Warburton on 2016. Next, let's proceed to the next slide. So next, let's proceed to the statement of the problem. So, Minister of Health said that suicidal cases among students have been increased over years. In 2012, the statistic for the prevalence of suicidal thought of 10% among the students, which has increased by almost 3% from 7.9%. So, based on the Blanton 2002, found that among people 13 to 34 years of age, that nearly lethal suicide attempts were related of no to self-report of no exercise 1 month before the attempt. So it's also indicate that low participation in sport involvement is linked to a rate of suicidal attempts among adolescent boys in Slovenia. So we indicate, based on the statistic, the percentage suicidal attempts of people who not involved in sport higher compared to the person who have active were involved in sports. So the purpose of this study is to investigate the relationship between the sport involvement and psychological well-being among your students. So next, let's proceed to the research objective. So okay, next is research objective. Okay, research objective they have three, which is first to identify the level of sport involvement among your ITM students. Second is to identify the level of psychological well-being among your ITM students. Next is to investigate the relationship between the level of sport involvement and level psychological well-being among your ITM students. Let's proceed to the next, which is next is significant of study. Okay, this is who benefit for this study. So firstly, of course, the researcher, and then for the psychologist, because it's about this mental health, right? And then also for students. Okay, let's proceed to the next chapter, literature review. So next, we proceed to the sport environment, sport women, and among your students literature review. So sport involvement has the factor that again psychological distress in adolescents. So it involves two potential mechanisms. First, reduce depression and anxiety symptom, and then second, psychological and social mechanism. So next, sport involvement among your ITM students. So sport environment have been show positive impact to college attachment, where through the sport involvement it could provide the opportunity to develop a social skill and a sportive relationship based on the kid 2000 Kim 2019. Next, psychological well-being and types of well-being literature review. So psychological well-being is the when an individual construction of concept to develop himself in order to be able to be happy. This is based on the Sharma 2019 journal. Okay, for the types of well-being. So first, they have four types of well-being, which is subjective well-being, life satisfaction, quality of life, and wellness. So for the subjective well-being is actually for defined as postpone things that hurt or giving up their this thing for pleasure. Next, life satisfaction is when sense of satisfaction with life is his or her perception of the world. So it is positive element that could bring happiness. Okay, next for the quality of life. Quality of life is the condition where each individual has the right to decide if their life is worth. Next is wellness, where wellness is the optimal health and well-being when where body, mind, and spirit are integrated to live more fully. Next, let's proceed to the relationship between sport involvement and psychological well-being. So the result of the study indicate that sport involvement was positive associated with psychological well-being based on the Betra Lee 2019. So where this this statement show when the student have less fear of having to talk in front of the classmate, and then less worry about what the classmate will teaching about them, and then less isolation in class. Next is involvement in sport, especially adolescent, have shown positive effect. Like I said before, from Roberta Lee 2019, it show decrease in the fear of having to talk to classmates. And then next is higher sport involvement in the higher punctuation in personal and social responsibility scale based on the Albatro Comics Marmol 2017. So it can means that when you involve in sport, so you have more discipline in in punctual in time in on go to the on time, do work in on time, meet people on time like that. Next is methodology. So methodology first is research design. So my research design is descriptive and it's correlation because it's focusing on relationship between two or more variable. So this correlation is to investigate if it's exit and it is measure to the strength of the relationship between the variables. So let's proceed to the sample size. So my sample size for the population, my population is from UITM students, and the criteria that I want is female and male students, healthy student. So number of sample that I will take is total 444 because first is 370, but I have to add on for backup if there have the person cannot join the the research. So this is the based on the Kershaw and Morgan table. This one. So I'm my population is 10,000. So 10,000. So my population 10,400. Yeah, 10,400, and I have to take 370%, but I have to add on for 20%. Okay, next sample technique. So my sample technique is simple random sample, where it's able to gather a large amount. So in we can uh, shortcut where we can take large we can take data in large amount in short time. So I use the table of random number where I set only odd numbers. Okay, next, instrumentation. Okay, for the instrumentation, I have three form, which is demographic, sport involvement measurement, psychological well-being measurement. So for the first one, is to determine participant gender, age, and experience involved in sports. Next is sport involvement measurement. Is measure using the frequency of involvement in sport. So it's will measure two item, sorry, and based on 5 point scale. So the first item for this year is of how often in the last month have you play organized sport in school. Next, for the second item, which is how often in the last month have you play organized sport outside of school. Okay, this questionnaire is they combine these two items because of adolescents may be less likely to recall accurately the total number of hours per week that they play sport, because before this they ask about the how uh how many hours you exercise like that. And then so this is hence for the questionnaire is to use to lead the less error variance in adolescent self-report of their frequency of involvement in sport. So for the best 5 point scale, first is based on first never, second once or twice a month, third is once a week, fourth several times a week, and fifth is every day. So next is measure using the scale of psychological for psychological well-being measurement by Carol D. Rife, which is has 6 factor, each compose 14 items. So the reliability of this questionnaire is between 0.81 and 0.88. Next, let's go to the data collection procedure. So for the data collection procedure, we have to ethic approval from the UITM, and then ask permission to do research at the participant, and then briefly explain to the participant about the study and the questionnaire. So after we explain, we distributing the questionnaire, and then after they answer the all question, we can collect the questionnaire. Okay, next, data analysis. So first, to investigate the level of sport involvement of UITM students. So you will use correlation. And then next, to investigate the level of psychological well-being of UITM students. So you will use also correlation. Next is to investigate the relationship between sport involvement and psychological well-being of UITM students. We also use correlation. Thank you. So that's it for my different proposal. Thank you.